I would never in a million years believe that he would do anything like this to himself even, or to anyone else.
He loved his kids, he loved his wife. I just don't know what happened.
I think about this community and what this community has lost, and I don't have the words to give you, and I'm sorry.
This scene is hard to be at for so many here in this community.
By sunrise, the neighborhood will contain 4 crime scenes. 8 children will be dead. 1 father will be gone. And investigators will spend months discovering that almost none of it happened without warning. It's still dark in Cedar Grove. Most of Shreveport is asleep. Somewhere on West 79th Street, a woman climbs onto a rooftop, phone in hand, and dials 911.
The female saying there's 9 subjects that live inside the residence say he may have shot them all.
5:55 a.m. A dispatcher picks up. The caller says there's a man inside the house below her. She says someone has been shot. The dispatcher starts typing. Officers are already being routed. 2 minutes pass. 5:58 a.m. 9 people live in that house, she says, and the man inside has shot every one of them. By 6:01, patrol cars are turning onto West 79th Street. The officers inside them are expecting a domestic disturbance call, the kind they've answered 100 times before. Within seconds of stepping out of their vehicles, they understand this is not that. 12 minutes after the first call, a second address enters the picture, 4 blocks away, a different house, the same man's name. By the time the sun is fully up, this will be the deadliest mass shooting in the United States in more than 2 years. But why? Here's what makes it different from most mornings. Almost nothing about how it happened was actually hidden. Unfortunately so. It was sitting in a police file from 2019, in a threat made before a wedding, in a Facebook post 10 days earlier, visible to anyone and everyone scrolling past it. The pieces were all there, in plain sight, scattered across years and across systems that never once talked to each other. This is a story of how they never connected, until it was too late to matter. As this timeline unfolds, see if you can identify the moment you believe everything could still have been prevented. This production is a journalistic examination of a documented tragedy. Our goal is to trace the systemic and legal gaps identified by investigators and reporters in the weeks that followed. This episode discusses domestic violence, suicide, and the deaths of children. Viewer discretion is advised. 12 hours before the shooting, a man named Freddie Montgomery stepped outside his own home across the street. It was Saturday afternoon. Across the road on Elkins' porch, kids were running through the yard the way they always did. Parents talking, kids playing, nothing unusual. A scene Montgomery had watched dozens of times before, on dozens of ordinary afternoons. He and Elkins waved at each other. That was it. That was the whole interaction. Later, after everything, Montgomery would tell reporters he replayed that wave over and over in his head. Because if someone had asked him right then whether anything about Shamar Elkins looked wrong, his answer would have been simple. No, absolutely nothing. Like literally. That's the version of Elkins most people in Cedar Grove carried around with them. 31 years old. A UPS driver. Up early on a route. Home most evenings. 6 years in the Louisiana Army National Guard. Signal support and fire support, never deployed overseas. Left the service as a private with nothing unusual in his file. His Facebook page, the one investigators would later pull apart line by line, shows him surrounded by all 8 kids in one photo, a baby balanced on his lap, a relative who was at church that Sunday morning, when the pastor stopped the service to tell the congregation what had happened. Described the family the same simple way almost everyone else did. They worked, they came home, they kept to themselves, just an everyday family. 7 years before any of this though, police already had his name in a file that had nothing to do with fatherhood, or church, or Saturday afternoons in the yard. A file that on its own looked like a closed chapter. It wasn't. March 2019. A school playground on an ordinary afternoon. Children outside doing what children do at recess. Running, yelling, not paying attention to the street beyond the fence line. Roughly 300 feet from that fence, Shamar Elkins raises a 9mm handgun and fires it 5 times. Police respond fast. Within the hour, there are patrol cars on the street. Evidence markers on the pavement. Officers going door to door asking neighbors what they saw and heard. Elkins is brought in for questioning. He tells detectives a friend had come to pick him up and that a passenger in that friend's car pulled a gun on him first, that he only fired because he believed his life was in danger. Investigators look for anything to back that account up. Nothing in the reporting available shows they ever found it. Prosecutors make a decision: 2 charges, illegal use of weapons, and the far more serious charge of carrying a firearm on school property, a charge that, given how close those 5 gunshots came to a schoolyard full of kids, could have meant real prison time. The school property charge gets dismissed. I mean straight out, like it was not serious. Elkins pleads guilty to the lesser charge alone. The sentence: probation, no prison. Life, on the surface, goes back to normal almost immediately. Here's where the story most people heard about this case gets it slightly wrong. Louisiana has a law banning firearm possession for 10 years after certain felony convictions: violent crimes, sex crimes, drug crimes, burglary. A law that, if it had applied here, would have kept Elkins from ever legally owning a gun again until 2029 at the earliest. But Elkins' plea, because it resulted only in probation and not a harsher sentence, landed just beneath that legal line. The law that looks, from a distance, like it should have stopped everything that came after, never applied to him at all. Investigators confirmed something else while going back through his record. No prior domestic violence involving Elkins anywhere, ever. Nothing on file. The 2019 case sat entirely inside the world of gun court. The marriage sat in a completely different world. 2 systems, 2 files, never once in the same room together. Years pass. Probation ends. The 2019 case fades into the kind of thing a neighborhood forgets. It wasn't the earliest warning either. Before Shamar Elkins and Shaneiqua Pugh were even married, she thought about leaving him. He told her then, years before either of them held a child of their own, exactly what would happen if she ever did. He'd kill her, their kids, himself. She stayed. They married on schedule. In the years that followed, the people around them describe a household that, from the outside, looked like it was working. Shaneiqua as a doting mother, the kind who dressed her kids carefully for school photos, who showed up for every small achievement. Court records from 2017 show a custody and paternity arrangement tying Elkins formally to Sariah, one of the eventual victims. Proof that the threads holding this extended family together ran back further and tangled more deeply than most of the coverage of this case ever managed to show. 7 children, 1 roof, in Cedar Grove. A blended family built the way a lot of blended families are built. Slowly, imperfectly, with real affection in it.
He texted me April 10th and said, "Auntie Shell, I need to hear your voice. Give me a call." I never did call him back.
2 months before the shooting, something breaks. Elkins attempts to take his own life, a hospital intake, a psychiatric hold, family members getting the kind of call nobody wants to get. He's admitted to the local VA medical center and stays roughly a week and a half. His brother-in-law, Troy Brown, doesn't disappear after that. He keeps showing up, inviting Elkins to sit outside on the porch, to play dominoes, to play cards, the small, ordinary rituals 2 men use to stay connected when neither of them has the vocabulary for anything bigger. Brown watches him closely in those weeks, asks him more than once whether he needs to go back to the hospital. Elkins tells him, "I'm fine," says he'll deal with it himself. He comes home from that hospital stay looking happy, genuinely happy, by every account, not performing it. He loves his kids. Everyone around him believes that because it's true. The years since the 2019 arrest had felt, to almost everyone watching, like forward motion. Elkins working steady hours at UPS. The kids growing. New photos posted to Facebook every few months. Nothing about the surface of that life suggested where it was heading, until early 2026, when the marriage that had been quietly failing for longer than anyone outside the house realized finally came apart on paper. Shaneiqua Pugh files for divorce, citing infidelity. A court date gets set, Monday, April 20th, to make it official. His brother says Elkins is distraught in the days leading up to it, that he told him plainly he doesn't want to lose his wife 10 days before the shooting. While friends and family scrolled past ordinary weekend photos, nothing out of the ordinary, Elkins shares something different on his own page, a poem addressed to God. One line asks for help guarding his mind and his emotions. Another reminds himself that whatever negativity rises in him doesn't belong to him. It sits there in public, on a page 100 people could see, for 10 days. Nobody reads it as a flare going up. Nobody has any reason to yet.
He did not want to be divorced. He wanted to be married and raise his children. He didn't want anybody else to raise his children. I know that.
Elkins never deployed, never saw combat. That single detail quietly puts him outside most of the infrastructure built around veteran mental health. Screening tools, crisis case management, outreach programs, nearly all of it designed with combat exposure as the trigger point. A non-deployed guardsman, 7 years removed from service, in a crisis rooted in his marriage rather than anything that happened overseas, is not the profile that system is built to notice, let alone track. He did reach out anyway. That's the detail that complicates any simple version of this story. In that narrow window, after his suicide attempt, the system worked exactly as it was supposed to. He asked for help, and he got it. What never existed was anything after. No sustained follow-up plan, no caseworker checking in during the exact weeks his marriage was ending. This isn't only Elkins' story. April Zioli has spent her career studying exactly this. The overlap between domestic violence and firearm access. Her research is consistent. A violent partner with access to a gun is roughly 5 times more likely to kill his partner. And separation, the exact process Elkins and Pugh were in the middle of, is the single most dangerous window in an abusive relationship. Not the marriage itself, the leaving. The same week in Annandale, Virginia, a former lieutenant governor shoots and kills his wife, then himself, with their teenage children inside the house. He, too, had been ordered to leave the family home. He, too, was due in court that same day. 10 days before Elkins killed 8 children, Caddo Parish stands up a brand new domestic violence unit, announced with the usual promises that this time warning signs would be caught earlier. Sheriff Henry Whitehorn says afterward he never imagined that just days after that announcement, his community would face the worst tragedy it had ever lived through. The unit existed. The shooting happened anyway. As we go through the timeline, think about the moment you believe everything could still have changed. We'll come back to it. 5:55 a.m. Cedar Grove is still dark. A woman is on the roof of a house on West 79th Street. Below her, a man has just been shot. She calls it in herself. The dispatcher who takes that call has no way yet of knowing what she's actually looking at. Officers are routed toward the address the way they'd be routed toward any call like it. 5:58 a.m. A second call comes into the same dispatch line. The suspect, the caller says, is a relative of the household. That detail changes how the call gets read. More units start moving. 5:59 a.m. The picture widens fast and it gets worse with each new detail. 9 people live in that house. The suspect has shot every one of them. 6 a.m. On the roof, the caller and her children make a decision in real time. They climb down off the roof into the backyard, putting distance between themselves and the house. A decision made in seconds with no time to think it through. 6:01 a.m. Patrol cars turn onto West 79th Street. The officers inside are still expecting, based on the initial call, something closer to a standard disturbance response. They step out of their vehicles. Within seconds, it's clear this is not that. This is something else entirely, and the scale of it starts becoming visible almost immediately. While officers are still working that first scene, before most of them have even finished processing what they're looking at, a second phone rings at dispatch. 6:07 a.m. Harrison Street, 4 blocks away. A different caller, a different address. A woman tells the dispatcher her boyfriend has shot her and taken her 3 children. She names him Elkins. This is Christina Snow's household, the mother of 3 of the children who will end up among the 8 victims. According to her aunt, Elkins had walked over, knocked on the front door, and shot her directly. Snow, wounded, managed to get her phone's voice assistant to call 911 for her. She can't dial it herself. 6:10 a.m. Dispatch makes the connection between the 2 addresses. Same suspect, same morning. 2 households, 4 blocks apart, torn open within 15 minutes of each other. Investigators will later confirm the full scope. 4 separate crime scenes tied to this one man this one morning. Back on West 79th Street, in the chaos of officers arriving, a 12-year-old girl and her aunt make the same choice the earlier caller made. Off the roof, into the backyard, running. Both survive. The aunt breaks bones in the fall. Elkins doesn't stay. He leaves the scene, finds a vehicle near the intersection, and carjacks the driver at gunpoint. He heads toward Bossier Parish. Police pick up the pursuit almost immediately. It doesn't last long. Somewhere in Bossier Parish, the chase ends. Shots are exchanged. Elkins is dead within the hour. In the first statements to reporters, police say officers fired the fatal shots.
7:03 a.m. Shamar Elkins was pronounced deceased at the scene on Brompton Lane.
Days later, Police Chief Wayne Smith walks that back slightly. His cause of death, Smith says, remains under investigation. To this day, it has never been publicly confirmed whether that final shot came from a responding officer or from Elkins himself. Jailer, 3 years old, Shayla 5, Braylon 5, Kayla 6, Kadarian 6, Layla 7, Marcaden 10, Sariah 11. 7 were his own children. 3, Braylon, Kadarian, and Sariah were Christina Snow's. Remember the 2019 conviction. Remember that it fell just short of the line that would have permanently banned him from owning a firearm. That still leaves one open question. Even with that narrow legal gap, how did a man with a documented weapons conviction end up holding an assault-style rifle 6 weeks before the shooting? The answer takes investigators 2 days to piece together. They start with the weapon itself, tracing its serial number back through legal channels, back through its original, fully legitimate sale. The trail leads to a woman who purchased it lawfully. She tells investigators she gave the rifle to a man named Charles Ford, 56 years old, a Shreveport resident. Investigators go to Ford. He's a convicted felon himself, which means he, like Elkins, was not legally permitted to possess a firearm at all. When agents first ask him about the rifle, Ford denies having it. The interview doesn't end there. Investigators press. Ford's story shifts. He eventually admits the gun went missing from under the seat of his truck around March 9th, roughly 6 weeks before the shooting. He tells them he suspected Elkins, one of the few people who regularly rode along with him, of taking it. A federal affidavit lays out what happened next, in Ford's own account. He confronted Elkins directly about the missing weapon. Elkins turned hostile, offensive, in the affidavit's own word. Ford, rather than pushing further or reporting it to anyone, let it go. 6 weeks later, that gun killed 8 children. The ATF and FBI both open formal investigations into the weapon's full chain of custody. Legitimate purchase, legal transfers to Ford, disappearance, and finally its arrival in the hands of a man barred from ever legally holding it. 2 days after the shooting, federal prosecutors charged Ford with being a felon in possession of a firearm and with making false statements to federal agents. Here's the mechanism underneath all of it, the part that doesn't get fixed by one prosecution. Louisiana doesn't require private gun sellers to be licensed. A private sale like the one that put this rifle into Ford's hands, and later stolen into Elkins, never touches a background check system at all. It isn't that a background check failed here. It's that private transactions like these were never built to pass through one in the first place. Policy advocates are blunt about what that means. Lindsay Nichols at the Giffords Law Center says families should be able to feel safe in their own homes, and that this shows exactly how fast that safety can be taken away. Advocates have pushed for years to close gaps like this one in Louisiana's gun laws. Those proposals keep stalling in the legislature. U.S. Attorney Zachary Keller puts the whole situation plainly. Elkins' death means the community will never see him face justice directly. Prosecuting the man whose gun he used is what's left. The evening after the shooting, Cedar Grove holds a vigil. Candles line the street outside both houses. A memorial grows on the front lawn of one of them. Flowers, stuffed animals, handwritten notes set against a door still marked with bullet holes and evidence tape from the day before. City leaders, visibly shaken themselves in front of the cameras, make one request over and over: stop speculating online. Councilwoman Tabitha Taylor asks people directly to leave the social media chatter alone, to let these families move through what she calls a devastating, traumatic process without an added layer of public scrutiny. Freddie Montgomery, the same neighbor who waved at Elkins less than a day before it happened, tells reporters he can't stop picturing the kids in that yard. Can't stop asking what kind of father does this to his own children. Nobody answers that fully. The honest version is that it was never one single thing. It was every gap this story has walked through, arriving all at once, on one ordinary morning, in one ordinary neighborhood. May 9th, 3 weeks later, 8 white caskets, one after another, carried into Summer Grove Baptist Church, each with a photograph resting on top. The oldest child, 11. The youngest, 3. Hundreds fill the church. Family, officials, clergy, neighbors who simply needed to be there. The city starts calling it the Eternal 8. All 8 children are buried near one another, together the way they were raised. Governor Jeff Landry orders flags across Louisiana, lowered for 8 consecutive days. One for each child. He says he can't imagine standing in the shoes of a father capable of this. He calls the children the light of their homes and the heart of their classrooms. A 2019 arrest that became a technicality instead of a turning point. A threat made before a wedding, never reported to anyone. A suicide attempt that got a week and a half of care and no plan after it. A poem 10 days out that nobody read as a flare going up. A new domestic violence unit that arrived 10 days too late to matter. A gun law with a hole wide enough for a stolen rifle to pass through 2 felons untouched. None of these on its own explains 8 children dead in one morning. Together, they do. 8 kids who were playing in a yard the evening before, waving at a neighbor across the street. No reason at all to think it was the last ordinary night they'd have. At the beginning of this documentary, I asked you to identify the moment you believed everything could still have been prevented. After seeing the full timeline, I'd genuinely like to know, which moment do you believe was the last realistic chance to stop what happened?